The Extraordinary Phenomenon Investigations Council presents Epic Voyages. Come join us as we enter and experience the great mysteries of the world with tonight's host,
Ken Gerhard.
Good evening all, and welcome to Epic Voyagers Radio. EPIC stands for Extraordinary Phenomenon Investigation Council, and I am your guest host for tonight's episode. My name is Ken Gerhard, and I am EPIC's resident cryptozoologist, if you will. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the term, essentially I go out with my colleagues and search for evidence of unverified animal species and all manner of mysterious creatures, i.e. Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, the Chupacabra, the Jersey Devil, and the list goes on and on. So for tonight's episode, I thought it would be very appropriate to do a crypto-centric episode. And to make this happen, I decided to ask a distinguished colleague and a very close friend of mine, one of the true gentlemen and scholars in the field of cryptozoology, Mr. Scott Marlowe. Scott, are you there this evening?
I'm here.
Wow, this is going to be fun, right, Scott? We always love talking about this.
It always
stuff.
is. We have a great time when we go on the air.
We do, and I'm not sure to what extent our listening base is familiar with the field. Of course, EPIC covers the gamut as far as everything from the paranormal to UFOs to all types of unexplained mysteries, and cryptozoology tends to fall into that certain category just because people are very interested, of course, with things that are unexplained and mysteries and the like. So,
well, let's just make it simple and say that we're going to talk about mystery animals tonight.
There you go, and then that is the actual definition, if you will, of cryptozoology, and of course. It is an evolving field, and I'm sure Scott and I will talk about that at some point as well. Scott, let me go ahead and read your bio. Give our listeners some background here on where you're coming from. Proclaimed as America's most credible cryptozoologist, Scott Marlowe spends as much time in camos and boots as he does in lab coat and Oxfords. A fellow of the famed Pangea Institute and educational consultant to the American Primate Conservation Alliance, Marlowe is the first expert in the field to succeed in establishing an ongoing college course in cryptozoology at a state institution of higher learning anywhere in the world. His cryptozoology course, hailed as one of the top 10 news stories of 2004 by the Cryptozoologist, which is a well-known insider eMagazine, has won both accolades and awards for its fresh approach and application of forensic science methodologies to the study of enigmatic animals. Author of Cryptid Creatures of Florida, which is published by CFC Press in Great Britain, Marlowe literally wrote the book on cryptozoology in the Sunshine State. Marlowe's television credits include Monster Quest, Is It True?, Legend Hunters, Destination Truth, William Shatner's Weirder What, and Weird Travels, in addition to countless radio appearances, TV guest spots, and lecture tours. So quite an impressive resume there, Scott. Yeah, you've done it all, my friend.
Folks. You're going to make me blush.
Oh, gosh. Scott, why don't we start out by give our listeners some background on Pangia Institute. What is your group mission, so to speak?
Well, and you're one of the fellows. Actually, we've got a very distinguished list of fellows, including people from Cornell and Stanford, the Florida Keys Community College, where I teach, Valencia. I mean, we've got quite a few really high-powered individuals. And we started out as an educational adjunct, designing classes and conducting field trips, since the schools have pretty much stopped doing that.
Right.
for grade schools and elementary schools and even colleges and even higher groups. Now we even, Ed Patuk, for example, who's one of our fellows at Florida Atlantic, takes student groups to Colorado to go dinosaur hunting in the fossil grounds there as part of his courses, and goes down to the Belize and does research on the coral reef. We're doing stuff all over the place with our fellows. Matter of fact, I'm just putting the final touches on Milestones 5. We do that every few years to review what the organization has done, and we'll be posting that up on YouTube and Facebook shortly. But the first 4 are up there already, so you can see we pretty much started as a very local group and consider ourselves lucky when we've got a little coverage in the local newspaper, and now we get national coverage, and we're appearing on quite a few shows and even making movies ourselves now. So we're having a heck of a time, and it's been a meteoric rise over the past 12 years. But
cool.
We have a lot of fun, and the nice thing about it is we're not all so stuffed shirt that talking about things like you and I are going to talk about tonight is a no-no. We're permitted to talk about the weird and unusual, or what we like to call the weird, strange, and unexplained.
Absolutely, and that's why I'm definitely feel honored to be a fellow, and have had great experiences working with you on a number of projects. Scott, let me play devil's advocate here for a moment. This will be fun. I'll be stepping outside, taking off my usual hat here. Why does cryptozoology exist? Haven't we discovered all the animals in the world at this point?
Well, no. I mean, our the favorite ones for the public, which is Bigfoot and Nessie and the Chubby and all those things are very difficult and equivocal. But science discovers about 300 new species that were previously unknown every year. And obviously, in order to do that, sometimes, and actually most of the time, these creatures are colloquial legends, if not known widely, or they're animals that just nobody thought existed, and they do, like the miniature dolphin that just turned up. So sometimes it's as enormous as ostensibly the extinct fish like the coelacanth, which is still merrily paddling around South Africa and Indonesia, that's as old as the dinosaurs, if not older, or something relatively small like the Laotian rock rat. Excuse me, I've had 1 or 2 Yinglings tonight, so my tongue might get in the way. But
that's all good.
Actually, it's a good beer, but I think I'm going to switch. They've got a new one that I apparently had some influence in naming that is now called the Swamp Ape Beer, made by a brewing company here in Florida. It is absolutely incredible. I've only had it twice, but it is really good. It has a very interesting flavor, and I'm in contact with them, and we're going to see what we can do about working something out. But in any case, unfortunately, that's not available at the local Publix by the bottle yet. I got to go into particular places that have it. But so I have to settle for Yingling, which is my favorite beer, next to Swamp Ape. So we'll see what happens with that. But I'll probably have one more tonight while we're on the air. I've had 2 already.
No worries. It's very casual here, Scott.
Oh, yeah.
You brought up some good points there. So animals are rediscovered. So I think it really has to do with people's perception of the world and how much we really know about, for example, what lies in many of these remote wilderness areas. Scott, isn't it true that we have all types of, deserts, jungles, mountains, swamps? I mean, all types of places on Earth that are real. So go ahead. Because we can see from space onto somebody's patio and read a matchbook cover doesn't necessarily mean that we can find the needle in the haystack if we don't know where the needle is at the moment. And there's lots of places on the planet that are sparsely populated or are still very remote, like some of the mastiffs up in the Himalayas, where these types of animals are turning up all the time. There's still a lot of the planet to see, and of course we've been down to the Marianas Trench, once?
There's still plenty to discover in the oceans, and extremophiles are a particularly interesting classification of animal because we're beginning to find out that life finds a way, and that even under the most extreme environments, if there's certain things are present like water, that life seems to find some way to pop up.
Oh, those are excellent points, and actually several people in the chat room are reinforcing what you're saying about the oceans. I mean, gosh, we really know very little about what lies down there, in some of those deep trenches. So,
well, the internet know-it-alls, there's plenty of them out there. You and I have had our run-ins with a few of the so-called skeptics who, or at least parade themselves as skeptics on the internet in the chat rooms and blogs, who are really cynics and just want an opportunity to rain on somebody's parade. But, what can I say? There's all types that make the world go round. If it weren't for that, we'd have no excitement, right?
Well, absolutely. And, I guess, from my point of view, I always like to clarify that, I consider myself somewhat skeptical. Now, a skeptic is a person who's objective. And typically someone that's simply a negative and debunking everything is more of a critic, at least in my own personal view. But, at least people that get out there and explore these possibilities and look for these things, because someone's got to do it, right? Scientists aren't picking up that mantle. Is that correct?
Well, you first of all, in order to be a scientist, you have to be a skeptic. There are certain rules of evidence that apply to science that are way different than, say, would apply in a courtroom. Science can't prove the existence of anything by hearsay, whereas in a courtroom you can prove a case by hearsay. And it's good that it's that way, but it's very stringent. And unfortunately, with science, as with other professions, some people have hung their hat on a lifetime worth of work on something that isn't exactly factual. So you have, as it turns out, you have the problem of people having to back up, regroup, fall back, and and rewrite the history books, and that type of change doesn't come quickly. Unless somebody's prepared to walk into a symposium with Bigfoot on a leash, even if you find a body, I doubt very seriously that it's going to be taken seriously for years. Until
that would be a sight.
Yeah, well, it would be kind of fun.
Big leash, I hope.
Well, I don't care. I mean, if Stinky's well behaved, I don't care if I bring a swamp ape in that way. But as long as she behaves herself. But it's funny. There's so many weekend warriors out there, and I don't want to diminish what they do. I mean, I'm sure they have lots of fun. But, Dion Fawsey and Jane Goodall didn't make their monumental discoveries in a weekend between bottles of beer. You really got to get out there and you got to work and you got to live in the environment and you got to get accepted by the animals sometimes before they'll even show themselves.
Right.
So it's not as simple as it appears, and some things happen strictly by accident. I mean, you and I were on a wonderful expedition with Lee Hales. Better put the last name in there so everybody knows what we're dealing with, because there have been reports of a mysterious black large cat in the Carabel, Florida area. We spent an entire rainy weekend up there out in the woods getting soaked, doing our bit and putting out traps and cameras and things to see if we could get lucky in areas where the animal had been seen. And of course, we didn't really have much other than the success that you and Lee had with your experiment on trying to determine the size of the animal from a video that was taken by Larry Miller, a hunter up there, some time ago. But lo and behold, on the way home, my son and I are driving in two separate vehicles. He had the RV, and I had my car, and I was taking the lead, and we were coming down, 471, that outside of Colt Creek State Park, a little bit further up north from there. And what runs out in front of us?
A black panther.
Black Florida panther.
Wow.
And and of course I did a double take and said, "Oh no, this can't be happening." And I called my son on the cell phone saying, "Did you see that, or am I imagining things?" And he said, "You mean the big black panther that almost got hit running across the street in front of you?" And I said, "Yeah." and truth is stranger than fiction. I told everybody no one would believe it. They'd all think we were hoaxing, but it actually happened. And a couple weeks later, I went to see the park ranger up there to talk to him about something else. We were filming up there for a show. And I asked Scott Spalding, the ranger up there, about that, and then told him what happened. He said, now, that is the 6th encounter over 4 years, and 4 of the encounters were reported by my own park rangers.
Well,
so
that's impressive. I mean, that's very credible sources.
They're here. But science says it's impossible. They can't exist.
Well, let's clarify that now, Scott, because you've created a nice segue here. One of the cryptids, and cryptid is a term, just so our listeners know here, that it's a general description of different types of mystery animals. Black panthers are cryptids that don't necessarily get a lot of play compared to things like Bigfoot, but definitely something that's very pertinent. Explain to our listeners why, the whole notion of a black panther is so remarkable.
Well, the panther, North American panther, of which the Florida panther is a somewhat smaller, I hesitate to call it a subspecies, but it's the same animal, but it's smaller than the Midwestern and Rocky Mountain mountain lion. But they're all puma concolor. Now, according to science, it is not possible genetically for that animal to be melanistic, i.e. black. Now, there are black panthers in South America, but that's a misnomer. They're actually jaguars,
right.
and that is a different cat. But
and black leopards in Asia, right?
Right, and you can have a melanistic jaguar, which means it can be black. You can have a melanistic Jeffroy's cat, which happens to be a smaller house cat-sized cat from South America. The Jaguarundi, which is not widely known in the U.S. but is widely known in Central and South America, can be black. But those are established. They've bred black varieties of these animals in zoos. Science accepts that it's possible. Now, I kind of differ with the experts because, number one, I've seen these cats now twice, the black ones, black Florida panthers. I've raised Florida panthers from cubs, so I know what they look like. I know their profile. So not I haven't raised black ones now, don't get me wrong. I've raised the regular colored type. But when they're born, they have black and gold spots. Patches, I guess, would be a better thing. They look a little bit more. Yeah, they look a little bit more like a clouded leopard with the black patches. So the ability to produce black fur is there. They just lose it as they get older. So I suspect that somewhere along the line, especially in areas like these swamps that we have up in the northern part of the state, where these animals, I got to get into something where I disagree with Lee, but the black coloration is better for them in terms of camouflage than the gold, which would stand out against the black tree trunks. So I suspect that what you're seeing is an evolutionary leap, where since the black gene is there, it's switching on instead of the gold gene, and you're getting a melanistic or dark-colored cat. And that is an evolutionary issue. And as I said, since they can produce black fur when they're young, there's no reason in the world that I can see they can't produce it when they get older. But Lee seems to believe that the Florida panther only exists in the deep south of the state, and I know that is not true. It exists all over the southeastern United States. And I have seen one as far away as Alabama, on the border between Alabama and Pensacola, because I had one walk through as I was sitting out enjoying a mint julep one afternoon with a hunting dog. I've seen one walk on a vacant lot across the street or right next to this particular home and dive into the bayou and swim to the Florida side. So I know bloody well they're there. You want to believe me, you don't want to believe me, that's fine. I can't produce it scientifically, so I can't say see, but I know anecdotally that it's there because I have seen it. So, take that for what it's worth.
Certainly a possibility. Now, Scott, people in the chat room are wondering that couldn't some of these black cats be escapees from different exotic collections?
And that's why we have to capture them, or we have to get some evidence of them in order to find this out. For example, if the size issue is of importance, that the experiment you and Lee were doing, because everybody, the hunter, all the people who have seen it insist that the animal's the size of a Florida panther. However, that could be equivocal. There are some circumstances where it may or may not be, and I've interviewed a number of people up there who have reported a variety of sizes. Now, having myself seen a black Florida panther, I know that that's possible. But given the fact that some people are reporting an animal a little bit bigger or shorter than a house cat, it could be a jaguarundi, which has short little legs and runs kind of like an otter when it runs. And they could certainly have escaped or migrated here because we know that they're in Arizona and Texas. They've been confirmed there. But then also there's the Jeffroy's cat, and you have a boatload of zoos and care facilities and rescue facilities and whatnot, which all have these animals up in the Panhandle and elsewhere in the state. And we have hurricanes. I mean, you know, the snake problem that we have in the Everglades, everybody said, oh, that's people releasing pets. I'm not so sure. We had a serpentarium down there, or an area where they breed these snakes, and at the time, covers were not required on their containers. They just put them on a shelf where they were the fit was so tight that that didn't need a lid. And that facility was devastated, and many of the snakes escaped. And I suspect that that's where the snakes actually came from, not from pet releases. But of course, wow. Florida Fish and Wildlife would draw and quarter me for saying that, but so be it.
Wow. Yeah, that's
that would be the first time they and I have had words. So
that's certainly those are certainly strong possibilities, Scott. The thing I always have to kind of point out to people is the number of black panther reports around North America, and also, of course, in England, where you have things like the Surrey puma and the beast of Budden and so forth. But in fact, today I received an email from a gentleman who claims he saw a black panther in one of the southern states. So just the sheer number of reports would indicate that it can't just be escaped exotic cats. I mean, it seems like whatever is out there is breeding.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we know, for example, that jaguarundi and bobcats can breed with different types of cats. So you could have some hybrids and things too. So that's why it's important to capture these things live. I emphasize, do not advocate killing any animal.
Definitely not.
So I prefer live capture, and that also can tell us a great deal from a living animal about where it came from and how it got there. Especially with a lot of the so-called exotics, because now many of the locations are required to embed subcutaneous transponders.
Wow. Well, that is fascinating stuff for sure.
Yeah.
Let's get on to another topic here, Scott, because this is one of your real areas of expertise. A few weeks ago here on Epic Voyages Radio, we had Lyle Blackburn, who's the author of a new book on the Falk monster. And you've, of course, spent a lot of time doing research on Florida's swamp ape. Of course, many people are familiar with the term skunk ape because the media has given that a lot of play. What are we essentially categorize these animals as basically a southern version of Bigfoot, I guess, if you will. What are the characteristics of the Florida swamp ape, and how do you think it might relate to reports of Bigfoot-type creatures around the country?
Well, I've got to clarify some terms. Bigfoot's become a catch-all word that means any bipedal hairy primate seen anywhere around the world anymore. At one time, Bigfoot and Sasquatch was synonymous, but Sasquatch is a variety of Bigfoot now. So the difference between the Sasquatch and the swamp ape is the Sasquatch stands considerably higher, has a different foot anatomy. It still has parallel toes, but it is a more trapezoidal track versus a more hourglass shape with a upper bulge of the swamp ape. And based on the foot anatomy and some of the sightings that I've worked on, and I've only seen it once myself, and that was back in '75, which got me started on all this stuff. The animal stands about the same height as a human instead of taller, is covered with dense fur, but it's shorter. Does not always, despite its name, reek like a skunk, but it is very muscular, and it stands out more as opposed to the shaggy dog style of the Sasquatch. So I believe, and I've written in Pangea Anthology 1, a paper that suggests that while the Sasquatch creature might be related, and I emphasize might, be related to the Gigantopithecus blacki as proposed by Grover Krantz, that the swamp ape is from a similar lineage but a different branch of that particular ape family, and it evolved from the Oreopithecus of the Mediterranean basin, and actually got here because it's partially aquatic. Now, that does not mean that it lives underwater. It just means that it has an affinity for water and lives in swampy areas. And you have to remember that sea levels have risen and dropped dramatically over the period of time that this animal has evolved. And we now know from work done by Spanish researchers that the swamp ape, as they called it there in Europe, the Oreopithecus, actually could walk on two legs 4.5 million years before our nearest ape relative, Lucy.
Wow! And
so it would have also developed a very different bipedal locomotion mechanism, as proposed by Dr. Meldrum.
Didn't it have a kind of an opposing toe, though, as far as its foot design?
It did, and humans, as far as we know right now, are the only great ape that has 5 parallel toes. But over that period of time and walking bipedally as it does, it is very likely that the Oreopithecus over time would have developed the 5 parallel toes as well.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Evolution definitely occurs, and it doesn't take that long. So,
well, it's